Hey everybody, it's Dr. Falcone here at Dignity Integrative, and I want to talk a little bit about environmental toxins. What a fascinating topic. So we'll be talking about that in a few minutes. We'll wait for a minute or two for folks to jump on, and then we'll get started. So I appreciate everybody listening to this either now or live or after the fact, and hopefully it provides some good information. Always looking for good information to be spread and good questions to have. So please feel free to comment below or ask them on our website, and look forward to educating you a little bit on environmental toxins. So let's talk a little bit about that. So environmental toxins, it's interesting. There are 87,000 chemicals that we're exposed to in the environment. 87,000, think about that. That's a lot of different chemicals that your body's exposed to, or potentially exposed to, I should say. And very few of them have actually been studied in humans to see exactly what impact it has on us. So there's a category of chemicals called endocrine disruptors, and the feeling is there's about 1,000 of them out there. So what exactly is an endocrine disruptor? So you think of your endocrine system, it's your hormone system, right? It's your estrogen system for women, your androgen system, both for men and women, but think of testosterone, and think of your thyroid hormone system. Those are endocrine hormones. And there's my dogs that'll be barking in the background, so you'll hear them, unfortunately. So these endocrine disrupting chemicals, what they do is they mimic your normal hormones. So you actually end up having them kind of act as though they're one of your body's normal hormones. So your body gets a little bit confused. And this can be at very, very low doses. So think of this as mimics that are in your system. And for these millions and in some cases billions of reactions that happen in your body, you then have these kind of mimics floating around in your system that your body thinks of as hormones. And they bind to these different receptors, and they act as though they're types of these hormones that your body normally produces. So it confuses your body, and it starts going through different processes. And again, you're exposed to 87,000 of these chemicals, and of these, 1,000 of these are considered endocrine disrupting hormones or mimics. And they fall into really one of 3 or 4 basic, there's lots of different categories, but I wanted to talk about 4 of them. The first one is Bisphenol A, or BPA, and a lot of us are familiar with that as what used to be used in children's toys, but are no longer used in it. It's a soft plastic. Phthalates are another one. Phthalates are actually used in plastic water bottles, and there's all the concern about, using plastic water bottles. Another category of endocrine disruptors is what are called parabens, which are chemicals that are actually in a lot of cosmetic products and things that we put on our bodies. And the final one that I want to talk about is Triclosan, which is an antibacterial soap, and it's felt as though it can be absorbed through your skin and actually act as an endocrine disruptor. So we talked about those 4, right? BPA. So where do we find BPA? Because we don't no longer, thankfully, find it in children's chew toys, which it used to be used in. But there's 2 really interesting places that you find it in. One is, those thermal receipts that you get, if you go to the grocery store, or if you're getting your car filled and it spits out this little piece of paper, that's on thermal paper. That's actually printed using BPA, Bisphenol A. So my suggestion is throw it in the garbage immediately, and don't ask for a receipt, because that actually can go through your skin and you can actually absorb it. And the other place that we see BPA now is on the lining of canned foods. Now there are some canned foods that don't have BPA, but that's a common place for you to actually have Bisphenol A now in the lining of canned foods, and obviously can leach into the food. Phthalates are a lot of soft plastics, and think of a lot of the different the different plastics that are used for food containers. Now, there's different numbers that I'm not going to go through, but the best recommendation is, which we'll talk about, is don't store food in plastic containers, and certainly don't heat it up in a microwave. And for Triclosan, it's basically don't be using hand sanitizer soap with Triclosan in it. And they make them now that don't have that antibacterial component. If you see antibacterial on your pump hand soaps, the likelihood is this is Triclosan, and you'd want to really stay away from it. So where else do we encounter different chemicals that we put on our bodies and that could potentially have an effect on us? Well, one of them is sunscreens, and I would encourage everybody, especially as this is we're getting into our summer months, and everybody's out there and enjoying this beautiful weather, certainly that we're having in much of the United States, which we should be encouraging that for everyone to get outside and enjoy it as much as possible. But if you're going to be outside, you want to be safe. Obviously, most people put sunscreen on themselves and on their loved ones. And there's a great website called the Environmental Working Group, EWG.org. And that's something that I reference quite frequently. And it's actually it's been around for, I think, now over 20 years. It's a great nonprofit that does a lot of... that does a lot of great work looking at potential environmental exposures that we have through various different means: our food, our cosmetics, the things that we put on our body, or just general chemicals that we're exposed to. So I highly encourage folks to check out EWG.org, the Environmental Working Group, and that is one great site. Now they're going to ask for a donation, because they are a nonprofit, which I think it's a very worthy cause, but they have some really great stuff that I'll talk about in a moment with it. So when we talk about sunscreens, there's literally, I think, close to 1,000 different varieties of sunscreens. And there are some really great information on the Environmental Working Group. They do a special section just on sunscreens. So they talk about ones that you don't want to have on your body because they can be absorbed easily into your skin, and they can act as these potential endocrine disruptors that we talked about. The one is called oxybenzone, and it's a very common additive as part of sunscreens. The other one is retinol palmitate, which is actually vitamin A. It's a form of vitamin A that can actually, in that form, that retinol palmitate actually cause some problems. So you want to avoid that. And the third one is putting a combination of sunscreens and bug repellents. It increases the absorption, and it's probably not a great thing to do. So if you have those combo sunscreen bug repellents, you want to stay away from those. So which ones are good? And again, I would strongly encourage you to check out the EWG website. They actually have this little thing you can download, and it's a wallet-sized thing. So when you're going shopping for your sunscreen products, you can actually just pull it out and say, oh, okay, these are suggested and these are not suggested. While oxybenzone is a no-no, avobenzone is considered okay. So that's one of the things that they would say is okay. Not perfect, but certainly on the order of much safer than the oxybenzone. The other ones are zinc oxide based ones, which the important thing is that they're not absorbed in your skin. They basically sit on your skin, and they're not absorbed into your body and have potentially negative effects. So those are the ones that you want to actually look at. Zinc oxide based, avobenzone is actually another good one. And there's a new one I didn't hear about that they actually recommended, I think, in this year's, and it's called Mexoral SX. I've never heard of that one particular one. That was a new one that I had not seen. And it was interesting. My oldest daughter was shopping for sunscreens, and her husband really likes Coppertone, and Coppertone was known to have a lot of oxybenzone in it. But now they're actually advertising that they don't have oxybenzone in it. So all of this information that we're getting from EWG, the Environmental Working Group, is actually having an effect because consumers are informed, and they're now asking for safer products to put on their body. So that's a great thing. So there's also a great site called the Smart Human website. I would suggest that you go and check that out. It's a physician that's been very active in Environmental Toxins, and she has a great podcast. Her name's Ali Cohen. She's a physician. She's an integrative medicine physician, and she has a lot of good information on her website called the Smart Human website. So check it out. So she has like this list of 10 or 15 things that we should do to avoid in potential environmental toxins. So I'm kind of a minimal guy. I try and get it down to 3 to 5 because 15 are too many for me to remember, and they're all really good ones. So the 5 that I would suggest to you is, number 1, make sure that you check out the environmental working groups, Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. That's also part of the environmental working group website. Every year they rank foods based on the amount of herbicide or pesticide load on the plant, and basically which ones you should be eating organically and which ones are okay to eat that are conventionally farmed. And they're called the Dirty Dozen. So they're the ones you want to, if you're going to buy these, you would definitely want to buy these as organic because of the pesticide load and the herbicide load. And then they have the Clean 15. The way I think about it, really simply, is if you're going to be eating the whole plant, like berries are one. You're going to be eating a whole berry, right? You're not peeling something off it. The likelihood is you want to buy those as organic because they're going to have a lower pesticide load. Thick skin things like avocados, like cantaloupes, like watermelons and other things. Think of it as safer because you're eating the inside of it and the outside would be protected if they got sprayed with something. That's a gross oversimplification. So definitely check out the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15, and that would be a great thing to check out. So that's one thing. That's one thing that Dr. Cohen recommends. The second thing is try and avoid all plastic food containers for a lot of different reasons. There are safer plastics, and depending on the number, and I'm not going to get into that, you can actually look up on the website which ones are safer, rather which ones would be more likely to leach into your food. But in general, try and get rid of plastic containers. Certainly, if you're going to store food, store them in glass containers. If you're going to be carrying water in a water bottle, make sure it's a stainless steel water bottle or a glass water bottle. Certainly, the worst thing that you can do is buy that 32-pack in your local grocery store because it's on sale. Because the likelihood is that that plastic, that is what that is. Water bottles made of, has likely leached into the water, so it's not the healthiest thing in the world. And sometimes you can't avoid doing that, and I understand that, but in general, we shouldn't be buying plastic water bottles. You should be filling up your stainless steel or glass water jug and carrying it around with you. The other thing is nonstick pans. There's controversy about Teflon, but now they've moved past that in the food industry, and there's other types of nonstick pans. All of those you need to be concerned about leaching of chemicals into the food. So basically, use stainless steel pans as your safest type of cooking way to cook. And finally, for those of us that have a yard or enjoy a yard, make sure you're not spraying your yard with pesticides and herbicides, because you're going to be outside, your kids are going to be outside, and you're going to be going through your grass and being directly exposed to it, and then you're getting it on your shoes and carrying it into your house. So it's interesting, in Montgomery County where I live, they've transitioned over to only organic lawn treatments, so that they're realizing that this gets into the environment, and we have to make this kind of safer. So they're actually using organic herbicides and organic products on the lawn, so that they're not causing environmental damage and damage to humans and pets as well. So those are kind of the top 5 that I would recommend. Check out the EWG again for Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. Try and avoid plastic food containers. Certainly don't microwave in a plastic food container. That's the worst thing that you can do, because that will definitely cause those chemicals, molecules of those chemicals to leach into your food and then into your body. Basically, avoid nonstick cookware, and certainly if you're going to treat your lawn, make sure it's organic or don't use any herbicides or pesticides either on your lawn or certainly in your house. I know it's sometimes, depending on where you live in this country, you may have a big bug problem, but avoid spraying those pesticides in your house or getting pesticide treatments on a regular basis, because that can be pretty dangerous. What was the last one? I missed one. That was 4 to 5. Oh, reduce. The last one is to reduce your canned good use. Because remember, we talked about BPA, the bisphenol A, actually being on the lining of cans. Now, there are some cans now that advertise BPA free, but even what they're now using is a form of bisphenol. That's not BPA, but it's BPF and BP. There's different chemicals that they're still using in the lining of the cans. So try and minimize it as much as possible. Sometimes you have to use canned goods, and we absolutely understand that. But minimize canned goods as much as possible. So those are the top 5 that I would give you to make your environment a little cleaner. So last time I talked about kind of 2 things that was interesting reading. So there was and I know I'm going to pronounce it wrong, so I'm going to actually look at it. There was an article literally that came out yesterday that the FDA just approved for the treatment of Alzheimer's disease. And the name of it was aducanumab, also called Aduhelm is the trade name for it. And this is a pharmaceutical from a company called Biogen. There hasn't been an Alzheimer's drug released in over 20 years. So it was very timely that they should be released. There are hundreds of thousands of people that suffer with Alzheimer's disease or dementia-related conditions, and they really don't have any medication that's out there for treatment. The best treatment, of course, is prevention, making sure you're eating a healthy diet, making sure that you're exercising and staying active, making sure you have good social connections. Prevention is absolutely the best treatment, but we also know that there are a lot of people that suffer from mild cognitive impairment or dementia. And it seems like this medication, this aducanumab, is taking those plaques that cause those problems with transmission of nerve signals in the brain, those beta amyloid plaques and tau tangles, and basically are able to somehow remove some of that those toxins by breaking up some of those tangles. And there was controversy in how it was approved. One committee said it should be approved. The information looks pretty good. Another committee said there's not enough clear evidence of benefit, and they didn't think it should be approved. But being limited options out there, they wanted to get this out there into the world and see if this can make a difference. Clearly, this is not treatment for people at later stages of the disease. It has no benefit at all. These are really for people that have mild cognitive impairment and before they develop serious dementia. And the other thing I'm reflecting on is we had a celebration of life at our farm last week. This gentleman that was diagnosed 17 years ago with lung cancer and survived 17 years without it. He was diagnosed with the first cicada outbreak or the last cicada outbreak, and survived to this cicada outbreak, and he just passed away. And it was a celebration of his life and the things that he was able to do in his life, and it was very moving to be there and hear stories about his life. But I was struck by one thing that one person said, and that was that this individual, Michael, talked about always living on borrowed time. And I was thinking about that term, borrowed time, because we're all on borrowed time, right? None of us are going to live forever. We're all going to die eventually. We all have a terminal disease of one sort or another, because none of us are immortal. And what if we all thought a little bit more about living on borrowed time on a day-to-day basis? Because none of us really know how long we're going to have on this earth, right? Whether it's tomorrow, whether it's 50 years from now. That time should be spent in the best possible way and to live it intentionally and to live your life intentionally. So I'm reflecting on that term, living on borrowed time, and trying to make the most of every day, and trying to help as many people as I can, and be kind, and be humble, and use those gifts that we've all been given, and they're all unique. So hopefully you enjoyed this summer and enjoyed this time. Hopefully you learned a little bit about environmental toxins, and again, encourage you to go to the Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, and the Healthy, or the Smart Human, smarthuman.com, I believe it is, and check it out. A lot of good information there if you're interested in more information, and certainly we all need to be educated. So be safe until we meet again, which will be in a couple of weeks, because I'm going to be taking next week and going on vacation. Hope you all have a great day, great week, and until next time, check us out at dignityintegrative.com, and look forward to talking to you again. Thanks a lot. Take care.